The right attention from the wrong person during a moment of loneliness can trick you into thinking that they are the one. I was recently watching one of my older videos that I made back when I first started my channel. That was the quote that I had used in this particular video. And I wanted to bring this quote back up because something that I see from so many people, I realize a lot of you in the 3D, your actions aren't matching whatever you are affirming or whatever you are visualizing or whatever that you want to come to pass. And what I meant by that in this particular video is I see a lot of people, and again, as you all know, my favorite N word is nuanced. I see a lot of people that talk about dating. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with dating. But at times, I find myself asking the question, why are you going on dates if your SP is who you want? And ask yourself this, would you be going on dates if you had your SP? Your 3D actions aren't matching your internal actions, meaning your 3D actions aren't matching your living in the end scene. So you're basically, in a sense, in two different realities. In one reality in your mind, and the 4D, if you want to use those terms, you have one scene in one scenario. But in the 3D, your actions are not matching what you have in your mind about the 4D. So your 3D, you're taking one action and you have a different scene. And in the 4D in your mind, you have one action and you have another different scene with your SP. So in the 4D, you are imagining you are in a healthy relationship with your SP and you guys are back together and you guys are doing all of this, or you're affirming all of this stuff. But in the 3D, you're sitting here going on multiple dates with multiple people and it's not lining up. The process isn't lining up with the vision that you have up here. So in a way, this makes me question, does that mean you are serving two masters, as the Bible would say, or as a quote that somebody like a Neville Goddard would say? And it seems like to me that a lot of people do this and they are serving two masters in a sense. Because again, if you had what you wanted, you wouldn't be doing this external thing in the 3D. That was my whole point, saying, are your actions in the 3D in alignment with what your vision is? And a lot of times the answer to that is no. And this is why I want people to really look at themselves and focus on themselves and understand that you are not, a lot of you are not taking the proper action in the 3D. You're not actually embodying the feeling or the state of that person that you see in your mind. You're not actually in the 3D going through that relationship how you see it in your mind. And with that said, that brings me back to how I started this video. I started this video by talking about that quote that I had used in my old video. The right attention from the wrong person can trick you into thinking that they're the one just because you are lonely. And this is what happens with so many people. They think, oh, my SP isn't here right now. I'm lonely. I want to go have fun. I want to go date. And then they find somebody and then they start talking to that person just because they were lonely and they wanted to have fun. They wanted to test the waters or whatever the case may be. They don't even really want to be with this new person that they met, but they just did it because they're waiting on their SP to show up. All of a sudden, now they start to think, oh, maybe this new person that I met really is the one, not knowing or not realizing at the time that deep down, this person that I just met, this really is not the person that I want, and this is really is not the person for me. My specific person is the person that I want, and that is the person for me. And what could potentially end up happening is you start talking to multiple people, or you start talking to a new person, you start to like this new person potentially, but then miraculously your SP always comes back, because we all know how that goes. For some reason, when we start to talk to somebody else and we start to move on, it seems like a SP can always start to come back into the picture. And so now you are in what I call the love triangle. Anybody that's worked with me knows that I call it the love triangle. I call it the rock. Cheer, Hova, it's the rock.
It's the rock in here. Maybach outside got rocks in air.
And what inevitably ends up happening a lot of times is at the top of the love triangle, it's you. And in one corner is your SP, and then in the other corner is the new person that you've been talking to. Or it can be a love rectangle, right? So now you have, in one corner is you, and then in one corner over here is your SP, and then in this bottom corner is whoever you were talking to or dating, and then in this other bottom corner is another person that you were talking to and dating as well. So now somebody has to get hurt in these scenarios. Somebody has to be disappointed. Somebody has to be told, no, I don't want to date you anymore. No, I don't want to go through this relationship, or I don't want to go through this process, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times what happens is you are the one that ends up feeling the most guilt, because you know it's either two people you have to let down, or you know you're going to have to let down one person. And in your mind, now you're self-sabotaging yourself because you feel bad that you led another person on for all of these months that you were dating or talking to. And then your SP came back and all of a sudden you said, oh, I don't want you anymore. I'm going to cut you loose because the real person that I wanted came back. And you could have 2 or 3 or 4 people that you're doing this to. And so you got to cut all of those 3 or 4 people once the person you finally want shows back up. And who knows what drama can come with that? Because a lot of people, when you cut them off, they get very spiteful and things could turn for the worse. And you don't know what kind of action somebody could take in the 3D for the worse just because they're mad at you for cutting them off for somebody else, especially when they find out. Because a lot of times when you cut somebody off, they might not know. But if they find out that you had multiple people and you did what you did, that's another slippery slope. But guess what? All of that drama could have been avoided if you would have just did one thing. If your 3D actions actually align with your internal actions in your 4D in your mind. This is why I always make it a point and ask myself, are my outward actions in this 3D world that we're living in right now, are my actions matching what I have going on up here? What I see going on up here, am I matching that out here in the 3D? Because if you want an SP, like I said earlier in the video, if you had your SP right now, you would not be dating multiple people. You would not be entertaining different people. Now, with that said, I understand this conversation is nuanced. I'm not saying at all that there are not people in the world that should not date. I'm not saying that at all, because I do believe there are people that can date and still get their SP back. And I also am saying that there are people that can date and not have a problem dating and not feel a certain type of way about dating. So honestly, it comes down to you asking yourself, do you think you are one of those people who can get away with dating somebody or multiple people and isn't going to catch feelings or isn't going to find somebody new until your SP comes back? If you think you're one of those people that can date and dating isn't going to mess up your frequency or your vibration or whatever the case may be, then go for it. But if you are not one of those people, then I highly suggest you stay out of the dating market until you feel like you are absolutely ready to date and that you know it's not going to mess up your awareness or your consciousness or what type of frequency you are in. Because what I've seen from doing this since 2019 basically is I've seen so many people think that they are ready for dating and think,
Oh no, it's just fun. Oh, it's just casual. This doesn't mean anything. I'm just having some fun.
and what ends up happening is like I said, they end up catching feelings for somebody new and they end up putting themselves in the rock. Because from what I've seen, a lot of times dating does mess up a lot of people's frequency in the 3D. And what happens is a lot of times is typically you go on to get and manifest even more bad experiences with men or with women, whatever your preference is. Then you start to develop even more negative habits or negative beliefs about men and women, and then you take on that new identity in a sense. All of a sudden you stop and you think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Should I continue? Should I just stop and manifest my person back and all of that type of stuff? Which is why I just personally believe in taking a shortcut. I'm not telling you to do what I do or to think like me. I'm just putting the information out there and letting you decide what you want to do. But me personally, I believe in the Bible first. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and then everything else will follow. As what's in internally, it will be in the outwardly in the 3D. But most people don't think that way. Most people think whatever I do here on the outside, I'm going to change this here first, and then I'm going to try to change my internal state. And to me, in my personal opinion, is it works the exact opposite. You have to get your mindset right first. You have to be focused on, again, the kingdom of heaven, which you could say the kingdom of heaven is just your internal state and what you want to transform into, all that you want, all that you know you are. That's what's working on when you say seek ye first the kingdom. Seeking the kingdom first is knowing your worth, knowing that you are worthy, knowing that I'm not going to give my time and energy to all of these different people. I'm going to work on myself and my self-concept. And then once you do that, everything else in the 3D world, essentially in due time, is bestowed upon you. Me personally, I have never been the type to go on a bunch of dates. I've never liked the idea of dating a bunch of different people all at the same time and getting caught up with different people, different energies, and all that type of stuff. Anytime I was ever in a relationship, that relationship always happened organically, me meeting somebody out. I never thought, oh, I need to go jump on dating apps. I need to do this and that. Again, I don't do any of that type of stuff in the 3D because in my mind, I'm telling myself that whatever I want is already done. And then I let it unfold naturally in the 3D once I get in that state. So I don't take it upon myself to do all of this action, like going on a bunch of dates to find the right one, or to take my attention away from anxiety or whatever. So I'm just trying to kill time. So I'm just going to go on a date, or I'm just going to sign up for this dating app because I don't think that I can find my person in the real world the natural way. I don't have any of those limiting beliefs. So to me, I never needed dating apps. I never needed to do any of that type of stuff in 3D. And I still typically always ended up getting what I wanted. Now, again, with that being said, I'm not saying dating apps are bad. I'm not saying any of that type of stuff is bad. Do as you please. Do what works for you. But I know for me, I like to really practice what I preach. And I actually like to really try to apply Neville's advice or an Emil Quay's advice and all of these great teachers. I like to really try to apply their advice so that I can really say that I walk the walk and not just talk the talk. But that all happens over time with each person doing the work. The work cannot be avoided. Either way you slice it, whether you do 3D work or whether you do internal 4D work, the work cannot be avoided. You either do the work now and you reap the benefits later, or you're gonna wait till it's too late, and then you're still gonna either have to decide, okay, I've let all of this time pass, I let all of these years pass, now I'm gonna finally get serious about doing the work. You can't really avoid the work. You're either gonna do it now or you're gonna have to do it later. So you might as well do it now and get it over with and reap the benefits of having an easier life, potentially a life filled with less anxiety and all of the above. Or you don't have to do the work. And essentially, when you don't do the work, what you're telling yourself is you're okay with where you're at, because 9 times out of 10, not doing the work, you're going to stay exactly where you are. And if you don't like that place, then that is on you, because not making a decision is still making a decision, and not doing the work is actually making a decision to stay stuck where you are at currently. So it's up to you. You get to decide. Are you going to seek ye first the kingdom of heaven like me? Or are you going to be the type to try to go on multiple dates and do this and that before your person comes back while you're in the process of waiting? Will you be okay potentially with getting caught up with The Rock? Whatever you choose, I always tell people, before you take that first step, always take time to sit down and figure out what it is that you really want. Because so many people, they take all of this unnecessary action and they have no idea where they want to go, where they want to end up at. And I tell people constantly, before you do any technique, before you do anything, figure out what it is that you truly want so that you can figure out a routine, cater your routine, and cater your 3D behavior around reaching those goals. Because so many people, in my opinion, they spend so much time running, they're running in place, they're running on a treadmill, and they're headed nowhere fast. But they think, oh, Marv, I'm taking action, I'm doing the right thing, I'm taking action, I'm going on dates, or I'm doing all of this 3D work for my business, or I'm doing all of this stuff. And then they realize and they wake up and they're still in the same spot that they were. Don't confuse action with progress. Don't confuse speed with progress. Just because you were doing a bunch of shit and taking all of this action into 3D or affirming all day or whatever it is that you're doing does not mean that that shit is working. A motto I always live by and that has gotten me very far is, I don't want to move fast. I want to move correctly. And in my opinion, that's how a lot of you should want to move. And that's how you avoid making a lot of mistakes. So listen to yourself, quiet your mind, figure out what you really want. And from that will come the next step. You don't have to see 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 steps, 2,000 steps in front of you. All you have to do is see that next step and put that foot forward.